So first of all, good luck.
Celebration.
As
It's already
you can
recording.
see, Beautiful Mind is heavily invested with youth. I take a great pride with all of my youth mentor and mentees. So today it's a unique opportunity to present STEM related projects, which is a seminar based driven by students. So usually how we do industry experts, but I consider my kids to be expert in this field. Do your best. Don't worry. It's an inclusive environment. We all will have fun. We're excited to hear from you. Okay? So let's start from a big round of applause. So we will start with
All the best.
Hello. Okay, thank you very much for receiving me. I'm sorry that I cannot attend in person. I'm in Indianapolis. And it's a great initiative by the OSA Society of America to get the young scientists and budding scientists together and have a contest. I would really love to be there and see the projects or whatever you are doing, the young scientists doing. I cannot see you from here, who all are there, but I understand that you have come from different places, from Chicago itself and from different places. It's very important that all the societies like Odia Society, and we have many other societies and many other Indian associations and Indian organizations from the community diaspora, that we encourage the scientific and technological inquiry and the innovative spirit. Today, India is one of the largest innovation ecosystem in India, in the world, I beg your pardon. And there are almost today 100,000 startups, and very strong percentage, very large percentage of them are successful. And those who do not know, but I can tell you that India in recent about 3-4 years has produced one unicorn almost every 10 days. A unicorn you are ever, that is startup, successful startup, which within a reasonable time period gets into a $1 billion revenue business. So India is proud of producing probably at the fastest speed a large number of unicorns. So that shows the innovative spirit in India. Today I am surprised that when people are passing out colleges or even while in colleges, they are thinking and they are actually contributing to setting up of startup. This is a great sign, and I am sure the young people, the students, the senior students, even high school students among the Indian community will have the same spirit of inquiry, and they will they will be great minds in business, technology, in science. And today this young scientist contest in that context is an important step. I hope many of you will grow into great innovators, and also you'll be contributing to our knowledge, our academia, science, and research and development, as well as the economy. I thank you once again, and I wish you a great day today. I wish the 54th anniversary of Odisha Society of America a great success. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now let's go to the first round.
I'm 14 years old and going into 9th grade. My career goal is to be an engineer, and my research proposal is we can make renewable energy sources more reliable and how we can replace fossil fuels with these sources.
Hold the microphone. Hold the microphone.
Hi, so namaskar everyone. I'm Ayan and I'm going to be talking about renewable energy sources. So I'm going to go over renewable energy versus fossil fuels, benefits of renewable energy, setbacks. I'm going to go through 3 different experiments that I think we should conclude and then the conclusion. So what is renewable energy versus fossil fuels? I think renewable energy is energy created from a source that cannot be depleted. Examples include solar power, wind, hydropower, and wind turbines. Fossil fuels are fuels under the Earth's crust that contain carbon and hydrogen. Fossil fuels are burned to create energy. So, benefits of renewable energy is that they reduce greenhouse emissions, which, like greenhouse emissions, cause air pollution and global warming. It improves public health by improving the air quality, and it's just a good substitute for fossil fuels, which are depleting at a rapid rate as it's a limited source. Possible setbacks that we may have to overcome is renewable energy may not be reliable as it's dependent on the climate, and it may have less efficiency because it's dependent on the climate. It also has many geographic limitations as renewable energy works differently in different places around the world as there's different climates around the world. So for my first experiment, I'm going to be using wind turbines and a source of electricity such as coal. So for this experiment, data would be conducted over several months. They would show how different weather affects renewable energy sources and how compressed air affects storage systems within the windmill. So it shows how data can be compared with fossil fuels to show how renewable energy might compare with fossil fuels. We can learn if current renewable energy sources are sufficient and ways we can improve it. For my second experiment, I'm going to be using 3 different types of renewable energy: hydropower, windmills, and solar panels. So data should be recorded on each source of energy, and the data should be collected throughout different climates. The sources would then be compared by consistency and quality of energy. This experiment tells us which sources are consistent and which sources are better depending on different climates. So for my third experiment, it's going to be similar to the first one, but this time we're going to be looking at carbon and quality of air. So for this experiment, I'm going to be using hydropower and another source of electricity such as coal. So data would be measured throughout the year in different temperatures, and this will show us if renewable energy can be used as a primary source of energy and how the quality of air can be improved. Okay, so for my conclusion, renewable energy is very important and needs to be implicated in society. The consistency of renewable energy and the quality of air can be improved, and I think that we should find out a way to implicate renewable energy and use it in society as soon as possible. Thank you.
Good job. Good job.
Namaskar. My name is Priyanka Das.
And my name is Sanvi Dava,
And we are rising juniors at Matia Valley High School in Illinois.
and we are both planning to go into the medical field.
For me, I'm interested in cardiology because this sophomore year I took anatomy in class and I found the heart to be very interesting.
And for me, I'm interested in pediatrics. I'm going to be a pediatric surgeon because I just love being around children.
our research paper, our topic is heart attacks. And for the audience to understand what it is, how it happens, and the different treatment plans. Growing up in society, we've seen many family members and friends suffer from heart attacks. Heart attacks not only impact the recipient, but also the families with grief and sorrow. We believe that this is a very important topic to address because of how prevalent it is in society. If our projects were to be chosen and to be demonstrated in the OSA convention, we could use models like these to give a visual representation to our audience. Let us strive to create a society where heart attacks are minimized and individuals can live without the constant fear of this life-threatening event. Thank you. Thank you.
Namaskar and good morning. Today we will shed light on a topic of utmost importance: heart attacks. Heart attacks are a medical emergency that affects millions of lives worldwide each year. Our presentation is titled The Secret Killer.
This presentation, sorry guys for my voice. I'm sorry if it's hard to understand, but I'll try my best. This presentation will cover a number of topics, all related to heart attacks. The first, we're going to start with our introduction, then move on to symptoms, the 5 major types of heart attacks, treatment plans, statistics, and then finally the conclusion.
You can move the mic a little bit closer.
Our presentation is about the body's silent killer, or also known as heart attacks. As you can see in our research paper, everyone is likely to get a heart attack. A few factors do, however, contribute to the severity and the time for when a person may experience a heart attack. For example, diet, age, gender, and even genetics are all contributing factors that can affect a person's ability to experience a myocardial infarction, aka heart attack. In our presentation and research paper, we will go over the different symptoms, types, and treatment plans of the heart attack, along with plenty of statistics comparing America to India, along with Illinois and Odisha. We will also present a 3D model of a heart, as well as a virtual representation of an authentic heart. Using statistics from all over the world, the presentation aims to inform individuals of the risk factors and prevention of this issue.
Identifying if one is experiencing a heart attack is very crucial to avoiding any major health risks in and surrounding the heart. 5 symptoms that are most commonly seen during a heart attack include pain in areas between your shoulder blades, arms, chest, jaw, left arm, or the upper abdomen. Along with this, weakness, lightheadedness, fatigue, and a cold sweat is also important to know. It's important to understand that the presence of these symptoms does not guarantee a heart attack, but they should never be taken lightly, and this is why we feel that it's very important to recognize these symptoms, because if you work fast enough, you can save a person's life. Time is critical in seeking medical attention, and delays can have severe consequences.
So first, we're going to start off with the 5 different types of heart attacks. So there's STEMI and STEMI, coronary artery spasm, stable angina, and unstable. And of course, there are many more different types of heart attacks that can be categorized, but these are the main 5 different types that a doctor would tend to put heart attack in. So the first one is STEMI, which stands for segment elevation myocardial infarction. So to kind of go off of the meaning of that, it's basically an effect on the heart's lower chambers, and it changes how electrical current travels through them. This type of heart attack is known to be one of the more dangerous ones, as the artery is completely blocked. This means that there is minimal to no blood flow to your vital organs, which can lead to organ failure. That's why medical attention is very important to see if a person is experiencing a STEMI heart attack. The next one is NSTEMI, so non-segment myocardial infarction, and this is similar to STEMI with the same amount of severity and the same level of danger, but there is no segment elevation, meaning that it becomes hard to detect in an electrocardiogram. still has the same risk though. The third one is coronary artery spasm. This heart attack tends to catch people by surprise as there's no prior symptoms, unlike the other heart attacks. This catches people by surprise as the artery tends to spasm all of a sudden, reducing blood flow, which can lead to a heart attack. This, however, is less severe because there is no permanent damage, unlike the other two. The fourth type is stable angina. This is the chest pain that can cause your chest muscles to tighten up, which could lead to a heart attack. Again, less severe and no permanent damage. It's called stable angina because the pain in the recipient tends to be constant. Now the fifth one is the same risk factors and same pain, except it's called unstable angina, meaning that your pain tends to worsen over time. So we're going to talk about the treatment plans now. So there are many different ways of treating a heart attack or myocardial infarction. Heart attacks cause the surrounding muscles to die due to loss of blood. So the first treatment plan that we're going to look at is thrombosis. Thrombosis works by dissolving a major clot using different drugs or medication. The second one, balloon angioplasty, is when a catheter with a tiny folded balloon is threaded through the blood vessel until it reaches the plaque or the blockage and inflates to push it back into the artery, creating a bigger space for blood to flow through. Thirdly is the coronary bypass graft, which takes a blood vessel from another part of your body, either that could be your chest, leg, or arm, and attaches to the coronary artery above and below. Now, at the end of this presentation, I'll go back and we can look at the virtual representation of the heart, and I can explain more about how the coronary bypass looks like in a 3D model. And finally, lastly, is a heart transplant, which is the least common, as this is given to patients who have most severe types of heart conditions.
According to Dr. Sanjeet Sasthiran, Indians have a genetic predisposition to smaller coronary arteries, a diet pattern with excessive consumption of trans fats, and a sedentary lifestyle that puts them in the high-risk category of heart attacks. This makes the knowledge surrounding heart attacks especially important for us, as we are Indians, whose lifestyle also includes all the mentioned items. The high-risk factor can be seen through the heart statistics in Odisha versus Illinois and India versus America. The Indian CV cardiovascular death rate is 272 people per 100,000, which is contrasted by the global cardiovascular death rate by only 235 per 100,000. And according to the Insider, 0.34% of the population in India dies of a heart attack compared to the 0.24% that die in America. Heart attacks don't look at wealth, fame, or status. These can happen to anybody, especially if one has increased risk factors. This is shown through multiple media stars, for example, Vishmita Sen, who suffered through cardiac arrest at the end of February 2023 and underwent an angioplasty.
Many stars that, despite having more resources, do not survive these heart attacks, such as Siddharth Shukla, the famous singer KK, and the famous Odia actor Ravi Mishra.
As we bring this presentation to a close, I would like to emphasize the importance of what we have spoken about today. Understanding heart attack symptoms and taking prompt action can make the difference in saving lives and preserving the well-being of our loved ones. As Indians, we have increased risk factors, and we believe that it is important to use this knowledge in the future. Although being prepared for heart attacks is important, prevention is just as important.
As judges and audience, we hope you liked our presentation and enjoyed our findings on this common topic. Let us strive to create a society where heart attacks are minimized. Individuals can live without the constant fear of this life-threatening event. We appreciate your patience and thank you for this opportunity for us to demonstrate and understand of the heart attacks, as also known as the body's silent killer.
Thank you.
So I'm glad that you mentioned that prevention is also a big factor, right? Because if we don't have those conditions, if we can prevent those conditions. So through your research, what would be the top 3 prevention measures that you have found that people should think about?
can say two and then you can say the third one. Okay. So one thing that would be very important is a healthy lifestyle. As I mentioned, Indians have smaller coronary arteries, so if you're not healthy, fat can get wedged in very easily, and that's why a lot of us have seen in society growing up that our family members, our loved ones have had heart attacks more than maybe our neighbors' family members. So a healthy lifestyle is very important, along with this healthy food and exercise as well. Taking just a daily jog for like at least even 30 minutes a day can help your risk factors get better immediately.
Yeah, I'd agree with Sanvi. I think diet and exercise do contribute. But also genetics is a very important factor as, say, parents and grandparents could have experienced a heart attack. You still have a more likely chance of getting one than someone else who hasn't experienced that in their family.
There are a lot of genetic diseases that get passed down, like cholesterol, blood pressure, and this can also affect, like, make you a higher risk to getting a heart attack.
We'd also like to go over the virtual model of our heart. So this is kind of like a 3D model of an authentic heart. So kind of going back, I don't know if you remember, but I talked about the coronary bypass graft, which is one of the treatment plans for for a heart attack. So for an example, I just want to give you a visual representation. Say, do you see my mouse? Yeah, okay. So say there's like a blockage around here. Doctors would tend to get a vessel from either your leg, chest, or arm, and connect it from, say, the beginning of the vessel to the end, and have two of these so that blood flow is more efficient, as the blood vessel with the blockage, it tends to get weakened after a heart attack. So yeah, that's how a visual representation like this can help you guys understand how doctors tend to go about treatment plans when their patient has a heart attack. Thank you.
Hello and namaskar. My name is Deva Das, but you can call me Dan. I'm going to be a freshman in high school this coming school year. I sincerely appreciate being a part of the Beautiful Minds contest for the convention. Thank you to everybody that's involved. My career goals are focused on helping as many people as I can. I've always wondered how it is that privileged people can live on the same earth where so many are struggling for basic resources. That always struck out to me, and I want to help those people as much as I can in my life. For this year's contest, my topic relates to the mental effects of the throwaway society we live in. The encouragement of people to indulge in the use of cheap disposable goods has catastrophic events in the long term, and I want to showcase my ideas on that issue. I find it truly necessary as mostly environmental effects of such a society are being discussed, but we're going on a path that can mentally endanger the meaning of human identity. With that said, I'm very excited to be a part of the competition, and I'm waiting to see the amazing ideas that are presented. Dhanyavad and thank you. Namaskar. Alright, can everybody hear?
Yes.
Namaskar, hello, and good morning. Alright, this is my presentation. It's called Purchasing Identity. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. The simple rule that holds the universe together causes the balance in which humans exist. However, that very balance is what causes its issues as well. Since the beginning of humanity, harmful waste has been generated as a result of progressing forward, most of the time without a worry for where it would go. The time that we all live in now is special for that very reason. Now, there is worry. A growing addiction to chasing the latest trends has caused harmful wasting itself to become a trend. The throwaway society. Already discussed globally are the environmental impacts of cheap disposable goods and the increasing purchase and disposal of items. What is truly missed out on are the mental impacts. Even if it is lessened all the way, the paradigm shift in humans it creates will become a problem of centuries to solve, unless adequate attention is given to the topic. Because the increasing dependence on the throwaway society is causing people to seek out external goods to validate/fulfill their identity. How might we decrease the use of material goods as a tool to determine self-worth in order to maintain a humanly positive paradigm for humans living in an era of the throwaway society? To understand the situation in front of us, we must first understand the problem. The throwaway society, defined by the Collins Dictionary, is a society full of excessive consumption and waste of food, products, etc. Another important definition is fast fashion, which is inexpensive clothing produced rapidly by mass-market retailers in response to the latest trends. Existing research firstly shows how the common use of cheap disposable goods are. The statistics show that the use of such goods are increasingly common and widespread, indicating that the use of such goods will not decrease easily, and the dependence on them is increasing exponentially. To see what occurs as a result of such, we can look at the umbrella of fast fashion and its details. By a show of hands, does anybody know what haul videos are or has seen one? Well, I guess I'm going to educate you on that right now. There are videos widely spread across the internet with multiple content creators solely basing their content off of buying items in mass and showing them off. Although it is only a mere sharing of what they have bought, it starts creating an environment that encourages others to do the same, which will first start off as a task of mere enjoyment, but can soon become a recurring habit to keep up with everybody else on the latest trends. Haul videos and many other types of content encourage people to increase indulgence and create an environment that deems it normal to, which at face value seems alright, but starts becoming an addiction. The danger being that the person themselves does not realize it. There was a study done on fast fashion close to 4 years ago about the mental effects of it on people, and all these conditions that are shown above are observed to be caused by it. It starts to give a pattern that is shared by countless other observations, that participating in the increasing purchase of items causes people to get trapped by the subconscious pleasures it provides them with, which affects their paradigm and ruins their reward circuits. It also leads to guilt of having an attachment to items, which is not then solved by stopping, but by indulging more as a means to cope with it. An addiction is created, one that can only be stopped if it is acknowledged on a wider scale, which is only done by investigating it more. To tie the research above into a more clearer sense, we can look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It is a pyramid of 5 levels, and it ranks the motivations of human behavior, starting from the most basic needs all the way to mentality and enlightenment. When the affirmation of excessive shopping is given to people by their environments, both online and in person, they start moving up the pyramid, with the need to purchase increasing at every step. The first level shows how products are only a means of survival. Clothes, for example, are just a bare necessity. It then evolves into a need for resources and property, which can yet be justified by such products. It jumps higher then to a sense of connection, which starts to become the turning point into negativity. External objects start to become a placeholder for connection. Products start becoming the identity. Afterwards, they become the only measurement for respect, self-esteem, and status, rather than a singular measure out of the many. The mind of a person is engulfed by the idea of material items themselves. It is currently a pattern that is starting to build slowly to the final stages, the danger being that people won't be able to realize when it crosses the threshold into negativity. The throwaway society that exists right now is a cause for this, one that when heightened to an extreme level becomes a foundational change to humans that is a work of countless generations to reduce. By seeing such a massive long-term issue into the future, the question that begs to be asked is what can be done about it? One of the most effective methods is awareness. As Mary Curie once said, "Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less." If people can be made aware of the dangers that may conflict them, people will be able to stay proactive towards it and be able to stay away from negative effects while indulging in a healthy way. Awareness is key. The uproar our current environment creates causes the core values and basic needs of a human to be replaced by a need for objects in order to validate their own selves. The bond from human to human becomes a bond created not by an intermixture of identities, but a similarity in the items one possesses. A heightened extreme of a status-based community that is so greatly intense that objects become one's identity. The real danger of it lies in the fact that they are uprooting the balance that keeps a civilization together. They are taking away the natural part of humans, what makes us, us. Matter cannot be created or destroyed for sure, but allowing such a society to prosper when it can be stopped may be as close to true destruction as one can get. Thank you.
for your excellent presentation, and it's a motivation for everyone also to consume less. US being hardly 330 million people consumes 1/3 of the energy resources of the world. Countries like India and China combined, which would be like 1/3 of the entire world's population, they all aspire to consume more. What message would you give to these developing countries right now?
I would tell them, because I live in the U.S. and I'm given access to all this information, I will tell them to think carefully or think twice. You know how they say think 1,000 times before you do something. So because it can happen so automatically without a person realizing it, it's always important to take a step back and to think before they do something. And to educate them is the biggest thing. So that's what I would tell them, is to think carefully.
Thank you, thank you. Please try to...
There is one more. Hold on, Dave.
There's one more.
That's what happens when you read study and
When it's too good.
Yeah. Do you have any hierarchy of how waste has been repurposed, or have you done any research on that?
Could you repeat the question?
Have you done any research on how waste has been repurposed, or if there's a hierarchy of how waste can be repurposed productively?
I haven't gone too far into it, but one way is trading plastic waste, which is what some countries do. Like the UK is a major. It does it a lot, and a lot of hundreds of millions of kilograms of plastic waste go into being traded around on the planet, which can be repurposed into multiple uses.
Do you know anything about food?
Not necessarily. I do not know.
I'll tell you something just because you should know, because this would be helpful for you. There's food donation, there's composting, there is different hierarchies of how waste can be repurposed. If that's the purpose of your presentation, I would suggest you to look at that further in the future.
Thank you.
excellent.
Thank you.
Great presentation on a very important topic for our society. So the main question is, how do we actually influence people to generate more self-worth and their own identity, so they're not influenced by, media and other things. So how do you actually use the media and also social media to reverse the effect on people's mental health?
Right now, what we can do is just basic to us, which is why I said this, because we need to investigate this more, because, of course, more effective solutions can be found. And one way would just be this seminar itself, or having events like this where people can be informed of it. And on the online scale, the same thing can be happened, because the main thing that we can do is educate others. And that is the main way that other people will know. And the way to do that is just because I have said at least I've given a spark to some people, they'll give a spark to other people, and that just spreads around. So it changes the environment, but to have that change, many people need to come together and do it all at once, which is what we need.
Last question. What have you done?
Stop.
Have you done any 3 things that you can give us as an example that you have changed your behavior to help?
Listen to my mom. Well, I said that because when I go to the store and I think, oh, I want all 5 of these things, my mom says no. And if you listen to your mom, you won't do it. And as you get older, you'll realize that it's better not to.
Okay, I would like to point everybody's attention saying that we are promoting STEM education. So when we talk about STEM, it's always about technology and all this computer, biomedical. You are talking about a behavioral science. Okay, that's different. So how did you end up finding this? How did you end up getting this project?
This project, well, there's 2 ways I can explain this. One is that I've always had an interest in psychology. It's not really the career I would be choosing, but philosophy and psychology, they're very interesting to me. But also, part of this other program is called Future Problem Solvers. It's a competition. And in that, one of our main problems in the future was, it was 2043. And if you read the problem, you'll be amazed at how this could really be a reality. And that's what struck out to me, because it was talking about this mother and her son, and it's his birthday. And there's so many different factors that show you that everything is not zero waste, but also that there's the government now fines you if you go over the trash limit this much, if you waste this much. But it doesn't work because the people pay the fines. She said, okay, it's his birthday, I'll just pay this fine. And then it just shows how jumbled the society becomes. And when I read that problem, I did the competition and everything, but after that it stuck with me. And then when this came up, I just thought this needs to be shown because this can actually happen. Because there, for example, there was one person in 2000, in the year 2000, he predicted what life would look like right now. And he said that before you watch the video, you would have these things that you would tap on all day, and before you watch the video, you would have to watch an ad. It was so accurate. And the same way, I feel that that can also become a reality. And I just want to help in making that, making other people aware of it.
That makes sense.
I'm going to be an upcoming sophomore in high school this year. My career aspiration is to be a pediatrician in the medical field. This has been one of my main career goals, and I am super passionate about helping others, and I love working with children. Our research paper is about the connection between mental health and dreams. In our paper, we have discussed past studies that have been done on the brain's memory health and studies of patients with mood disorders in association with nightmares. Also, our paper believes in the importance of conducting further research and studies to better understand the analysis of dreams. Our paper discusses current research tools and also potential solutions to better understand the connection happening.
Hi, I'm Anya Panay, and I'm going into my junior year in high school, and my goal is to go into marketing. The reason I decided to participate in this competition is because I recently got very interested in the psychology behind marketing and why companies make the decisions that they do. From where products are placed in the store to what color the packaging is all very intentional, which is why I decided to go with a topic that explores psychology and the brain. The reason this topic is important is because there are a lot of studies that have been done, but nothing is definitive yet. We wanted to look at the research that's been done and draw some conclusions to try to find connections between them.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Subanshi Day. And I'm Anya. And our presentation is going to be on what effect does our mental health have on our dreams. Okay, so first I'm just going to talk about why we chose this topic. So the big reason that we chose this topic is because of how large of a question it is with very little concrete evidence. So far, there have been very few studies done and experiments done in order to fully understand the correlation between mental health and our dreams. Scientists still do not know the reason that dreams occur or what certain dreams mean. It is important for us to address this so that this can be brought to the attention to the STEM field to do further research in order to analyze dreams so we understand their meaning.
Dreams are about 20 to 25% of your sleep cycle, yet there's still no definitive evidence that proves what exactly they're made up of. Recent studies suggest that dreams are a random combination of memories and reality. This means that dreams are connected to the hippocampus, where mental images and memories are stored. Dreams occur during the REM cycle of sleep. All senses heighten and brain activity increases significantly for anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour. The amount of time spent in this stage and the amount of fatigue the body experiences during this stage can be an indicator for a damaged hippocampus.
Now that we've understood the basics of dream and their correlation in the sleep cycle, I would like to introduce two major mood disorders into the picture: depression and anxiety. It is proved that both depression and anxiety affect our daily life activities. Now let's see its effects on sleep. Depression and anxiety can cause brain changes, shrinking the hippocampus, leading to structural decay and decreasing brain functionality. People with depression often dream longer and more frequently, leading to increased brain activity. Breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure. This can cause fatigue and poor sleep, making dreams during the REM stage dangerous and scary. Looking over at anxiety disorders often involve negative dreams.
unresolved stress, and emotionally charged events. PTSD, a common anxiety disorder, arises from traumatic events and can cause negative changes in thinking, mood, and physical and emotional reactions. Many people with PTSD experience nightmares. They re-experience their traumatic event in their sleep, causing intrusive symptoms and severe emotional distress.
There was a study done by the Department of Psychiatry and Addictive Medicine which provides evidence that explains why we don't always remember all of our dreams every morning. Medical researchers have found that 80% of people were woken up during the REM phases of their sleep cycle, and they can typically remember most of their dreams in vivid detail. People that have a higher density of white matter in their prefrontal cortex tend to have an easier time remembering their dreams. Neurochemist Trotter's work has proven that the limbic system can be altered even after adulthood. Experiences involving stress for a prolonged period of time creates glucocorticoids that slow the learning process and memorization, which means that you might never remember your dreams in the morning.
Okay, next I'm going to be talking about the study that we also researched, and it's called Nightmares in Patients with Major Depressive Disorder, Bipolar Disorder, and Psychotic Disorder. And basically what this was a systematic literature search which was made using prior studies of patients with mood disorders in association with nightmares. So the two conclusions we found from this are nightmares are much more frequent in patients with mood and psychotic disorders than in the general population. The distress associated with nightmares that is correlated with the severity of the psychotic disorder. We also found two major statistics in the study. 69% of females that suffered with major depression reported having repetitive and frightening dreams as well as suicidal tendencies. And 82% of females were seen to have a nocturnal sleep systems, with psychological sleep disturbances in patients with mood disorders. Next, we're going to discuss two major tools used so far in many prior studies and on patients with mental health disorders in order to analyze the situation better. Neurologists utilize neural decoding to analyze neural activity in individual cells or networks, identifying patterns and stimuli. Due to neural decoding allowing us to recognize the output of nerve activity in the brain, we are able to discover connections between the imaging patterns and verbal reports from patients. Next, we have MRI, a non-invasive imaging technology which is used for measurement and analysis, producing detailed anatomical images. MRI scans reveal images of individuals entering sleep stages, providing valuable insights into neural activity patterns. MRI measures brain activity while people are sleeping, and then we use this data to put it into an algorithm. By putting this into an algorithm, we then reconstruct the dream, which helps doctors and scientists visually see this. Psychological and neurological fields should conduct experiments, studies, and theories on dream information, visual images, and memory activation.
Another thing to remember is that in both of these studies that we've talked about, there was a really small control group and they were testing for a very specific trait in their brain chemistry. So to further research, we can test a larger group for more accurate results.
We would like to conclude with around the world, more than 970 million people suffer from some form of mental illness, which hinders their everyday sleep and leads to problems, which then leads to more problems and more. In conclusion, by better understanding the relationship between mental health and dreams, we need to continue to do further research in order to analyze dreams so we understand the meaning. By performing different labs and colleges and scientists running research, studies, and experiments for us, we can get more data on the connection between mental health and dreams. Mental health can influence the content and frequency of dreams, so with necessary research, we will be able to understand the logic. Thank you so much.
I have one question. Besides this scientific research, have you done any other research like people do meditations for the good sleep or they do, there is a machine, if they do, that is called CPAP, to make your air flow smoothly so they can sleep in the night. Have you done any research? Many young kids nowadays also use that one.
Yeah, so yoga and meditation, all these things are really good for relaxing your brain. And so that's what we were talking about earlier with memorization and learning processes can be heightened if you do practice things at home.
Yeah, good question. Great presentation. You talked about some algorithm being used for the MRI. Is that something you guys developed or someone else used it? Or?
No, actually Japan developed it and they recently developed it, and one of our main things that we wanted for like follow-up research and stuff like that is we think that it's important to increase funding for more accurate MRI scans, because that's such a major component in understanding the better correlation between mental health and dreams. And no, we didn't do it, Japan did it, but because we want to increase funding so we can also utilize it for us too.
One other question around, did you find any correlations of color and images that basically helps either in the dream or as well as the mental health?
Colors and stuff would help more with your mental health. It doesn't trigger anything in the brain, but that could be a part of yoga and meditation.
Community edition for Python. Then I'll download Python 3.10.9 itself. Then I'll download the CSV file from Kaggle containing all the stock information about Tesla from 2010. Then I'll download the necessary Python packages using the PIP method. After that, I'll create the program using LSTM itself that will predict the stocks of Tesla. And then I'll observe and download the file with the prediction, which will be the conclusion. And let's get on my conclusion right now. My conclusion was that this investigation was extremely fun, as I've learned a lot of new things, like how LSTM and neural networks work. Also, data is split into two parts, training data and testing data. Training for training the LSTM model, and testing for testing it out. I also got to know how much potential there's in AI, because after a mere 100 lines of code, it produced me that graph that you see over there. I'll go into that graph in the next two slides. Something that I could do in the future is to code out a deeper version of this LSTM algorithm and to use it for my personal stock trading to see if it works in the real world. Then I would like to use different methods of AI to solve different problems in our daily life to show how much potential there is. Now here's a little video on how I ran the file and showed the code of the LSTM model. As you can see, I'm calling the file right now. And then this part I sped up a little bit because it was going really slow. And then here's the graph. Yeah, now let's go on to the graph. So, So as you can see, the green line is going through a couple of highs and lows, and this shows how much volatility there is in the actual stocks of Tesla. And the red line is the actual prediction, and it's extremely smooth, and it follows the actual stocks of Tesla. And as you can see, my hypothesis is a success, and I hope you learned a lot about AI, and thank you.
Very nice. Good presentation.
And the CSV file, that's practically it.
Okay, great. I looked at your graph. There were sharper deep fluctuations at certain point. If you go back to the graph near that peak, see that sharp peak down?
Yeah.
Green. Why you missed that?
Which one are you talking about?
Here, the first peak. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
because, yeah.
The delta between the peaks, he's referring to the one that is the highest.
Oh, okay, okay.
That seems to be the highest.
Yeah, the highest peak, and what was your question again?
Yeah, why did you miss it? You see,
Oh yeah, it's because my LSTM model
did
was
you
better.
try to analyze this? That's what I was.
Oh no, I didn't analyze it because I figured out that this would be a problem with the deepness of the LSTM algorithm, and if I made it a little bit more deep, then it would actually follow it.
Okay. Now the second question follow-up is, there is a lot of human psychology also involved in the stocks. The way, because they are trading, that is how the stocks follow, right?
Yeah.
So have you thought about including human behavior into this?
Yeah, I've thought about it. Like I've researched on how to predict stocks, and I could like use that in my with this so that it could like the prediction could be even more better. And yeah, I would use that idea. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any idea on the model drift on this model?
Excuse me?
Any model drift? You understand what a model drift is?
No.
Okay. What other, why did you pick this particular algorithm? There are other algorithms in AI that also can do stock prediction.
Oh yeah, so in the literature review, there's many different types of stock predicting AI, machine learning, and those things. And there's also another really good type called GRU. GRU is a little bit more faster, but LSTM is a little bit more deep, so that's why I picked LSTM.
Did you, so the training data was primarily on Tesla stock itself?
Yeah.
And have you tried to predict any other stock?
I was thinking about predicting Apple as well, and I'm sorry I couldn't get to that. And yeah.
Do you understand the accuracy of the model, which is what he was pointing at, which is the misses that you look at the delta, and so you analyze if you plot the delta, and if the delta stays within a probability band, then your drift is controlled. Which means if the algorithm sees new data, like a new stock, it is going to stay pretty much within that band. And that really is a matter of how much stock data you train the model on.
Yeah.
And at some point, you'll notice that it will begin to drift outside the band, which is a little dangerous because then you're buying stock or selling stock, which is, you're not making money on it. Right?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on how you would include qualitative data that you was talking about?
Like on the graph?
Correct. Have you thought about it, how you would include it?
No, I haven't really thought about it.
Thanks.
I have one question. You are in 8th grade. What made you to study this? Because it's not taught in the school, but it's on your own you studied those, right?
Yes. As I already said in the video, I've always been coding, and AI is a really good part of coding, and like how I also code in JavaScript, Python, and HTML, and those three. And Python is really good for AI, and I've always been passionate with AI. I like, as I said, like figuring out how iPhones work, Teslas work, and those stuff.
Well, the question is at the back. Do you have time for that?
Okay, so first of all, it's a great presentation. One thing I would like to ask you, you take Tesla, which is the highest volatility in the market. Tomorrow, Elon Musk was sleeping and in the dream he saw, I'm selling Tesla. Next day morning he sold Tesla. Tesla dropped 60%. How your model is going to incorporate that human behavior, or it's an environmental factors into that model? Because that's the key. I'm an investor. I'm done. My money is gone. So how your model is going to bring that? You don't have the answer right now, but that's a big factor when you go for a stock market. Good luck. Thank you.
Let me repeat the question actually. We can research on that.
We have to look at you can use any sort of fresh produce. I'm going to be explaining an experiment later in this presentation. But in order to do that, we need to look at the fresh produce's DNA. But how can we see DNA? Which brings me to my first question. Can we see DNA with the naked eye? First, let's go over the basics of DNA. The full form of DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. And we are concerned about DNA because it's passed down your family tree and it also determines how you look like. But in order to answer that question, if we can see DNA with the naked eye, the short answer is no, we cannot. Because DNA is packed and coiled into tiny cells, but in real life, if you were able to unravel it, it would be as long as a tennis court, which is specifically 27 yards. If you can see here in this picture, unfortunately I can't enlarge it that much, but this is how DNA first starts off looking in its original form. It gets wrapped around in histone proteins throughout this process, and it finally ends up in its ending stage, which is in a chromosome, which is then inside of a cell. So in order to see the DNA, we need to learn how to isolate it. So let's go over the steps for isolation of DNA. Alright, so the first step is, you can use any sort of fresh produce for this, but for this experiment I used peas. So you need to put the food product in a blender to add, these are all the ingredients that you need to add. You have to be very specific with the measurements or the experiment can go wrong. And you have to make sure you blend on high for 15 seconds. But why are we doing this? Why are we blending the fresh produce? If you blend the fresh produce, it would separate the cells inside every single pea you use, which now it would give us more clarity in the experiment. The next step is to transfer the liquid. You have to pour the pea cell soup through a strainer into another container. And then you have to add exactly 2 tablespoons of detergent, about 30 milliliters, and swirl to mix it. Make sure you let the mixture sit for 5 to 10 minutes. And then pour the mixture into test tubes or other small glass containers if you don't have test tubes at home. And it has to be about 1/3 full. But why are we adding detergent? So as you all know, detergent washes off things off of your clothes, right? It works just like soap. But since DNA is inside a cell, it's protected by lipids and proteins. And just like detergent washes off soap, detergent will also wash off the lipids and proteins, which will make it easier for us to access the DNA. The third step is adding enzymes. You have to add a pinch of enzymes to each test tube and stir it gently. Be careful if you go too fast while stirring, you might actually break the DNA and you will not be able to see it towards the end. But so for this one, you can use meat tenderizer, but if you don't have that, you can use pineapple juice or contact lens cleaning solution. But why are we adding meat tenderizer or enzymes? The meat tenderizer can cut the proteins, which will speed up the process, the proteins obviously compact the DNA, as you saw in the first slide, making it easier for us to access. The fourth step is the separation with alcohol. You have to tilt the test tube slowly and pour the rubbing alcohol. And you have to make sure it's towards the side of the test tube so it forms a layer. If you all don't know, alcohol is less dense than water, meaning it would be sitting right on top of water. So this will make it easier for us to see the DNA. If you see in this picture right here, this should be the end result of your experiment. As you see, this clear transparent liquid is the isopropyl alcohol, which was used in the experiment. And this was the mixture of the pea cell soup. And this white stringy stuff is the DNA. Where would you find this DNA, may you ask? The DNA would be between the layers where the mixture is and where the alcohol is. To make sure you get a wood splint or a glass stirring rod to pull the DNA out carefully. After this, you can send this DNA to a lab to get it for testing, to see if it has been altered in any sort of way or if it is in its pure fresh produce form. So, what is the purpose of this experiment? You have to be authentic when it comes to the food that you are buying because it can induce a health hazard in whatever you are digesting. So you can't always trust labels as well because it could have been altered while it has been packaging. So, in order to do that, this is why I was curious and I decided to do this experiment. Because I was always wondering why the fresh produce I was wondering why whichever fresh produce I brought, I wondered if it was in its pure form or had it been altered with any sort of bacteria. So, over the last few years, qPCR-based DNA analysis has been applied successfully to a wide range of food testing scenarios, including GMO testing, species identification in mixed meat products, and animal feed. And if you look at my research paper, you will find 2 incidents where the fresh produce has been altered with microbial contaminants, meaning bacteria, which would also issue for their recall. This is a visual on what bacteria can really look like. This is an infected strawberry with bacteria, but this is what your actual fresh produce should be looking like. This is bison meat infected with bacteria, and this is what it's actually supposed to look like. If you don't identify the bacteria sooner, it can spread and it would definitely look like that. These are the credits, and thank you for listening.
So I'd like to ask, because I've been hearing DNA, this DNA, then what is DNA?
But since I was looking at all these, what you can do at home, those are results of high-tech technology. So if you actually do have doubts about a product, you can obviously send it to a biology lab. The only purpose of this experiment was, if you were able to extract the DNA, you can actually send it to any lab you want and get all of your thoughts cleared up.
Question. Would the same process apply to separating, let's say, a broccoli DNA or some other vegetable
Yes, you
DNA?
can do it with any sort of fresh produce.
The same process?
Yes, exact same process.
Wow.
So when you send it to the lab, what is the process time? I mean, can you get it back next day or?
You would get it between 2 to 3 days, since they have a lot of high-tech technology which can process that DNA, which we obviously cannot do if you're not a biologist or a lab technician. But you would get it back very soon.
As a biologist, I can say it again almost it takes 24 hours. PCR run 24 hours. Then after that, it run our jail rest. So say 24 hours to be done that.
It's enough time to run the process.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask, just for the sake of curiosity, because you touched on this, have you, by any chance, tested any kind of DNA, DNA editing techniques, like how you would be able to store the information you would want to place into the molecule or replace data within DNA?
I haven't exactly got into that yet, but the only reason I chose this is because I think it was in my freshman year of high school. I did this experiment with strawberries and I extracted the DNA from strawberries. So if you were, I didn't exactly look into that, but it's a very interesting topic. Yeah.
Okay, can you use human blood to get human DNA?
That's a bit more of a complicated process, but that is also interesting.
My experiment is the effect of music, genre, and lyric language on memory. Before I begin explaining the details of my experiment, I would like to thank a few people who were essential in the creation of my project. First, I'd like to thank my science teacher, Mrs. Guerrero, for helping me come up with the idea for this project and to execute it. I'd also like to thank my literacy teacher, Ms. Maza, for helping me write, revise, and edit my paper. I'd also like to thank my mom and 2 brothers, Denver and Sheldon, for supporting me throughout this process. I'd also like to thank all my test subjects who made this project a reality. Next, I'm going to be explaining my purpose. So the purpose of my experiment was to find how listening to different types of music, namely classical music, English pop music, Korean pop music, and no music, influence how well test subjects are able to memorize several sets of spelling words when they are assessed. Next is my hypothesis. So my hypothesis was that if people are given the same amount of time to memorize several several sets of spelling words while listening to different types of music, namely English pop, Korean pop, classical music, and no music, then the tests taken that were studied for while listening to classical music will have the best results. Next are my variables. First, I have my dependent variable, which is the test scores of each of my test subjects. My independent variable was the type of music they were listening to while they studied the words. My control group was the test with no music, to which I compared the rest of my data to. And my controls were the test subjects, the songs I played, and the difficulty of the words. So next, I have the background research that led to this experiment. So humans have always been curious about music. Even 20,000 years ago, cave people were creating primitive percussion instruments in bone harps. And every known civilization to humanity to date has had music in some form, which proves what a huge part of our culture music is. So due to this interesting relationship between music and the human brain, as science has progressed, numerous studies have been conducted on this topic. All of these studies have culminated in a theory known as the Mozart theory. This theory states that classical music, not just that composed by Mozart, helps the brain function better. However, in my mind at least, this raises further questions about other types of music and how they influence the brain. I believe that to understand this, we must go back to the very basics of how we hear. This brings us to the anatomy of the ear.
Can you move, please? Yeah, go.
There are three main parts to the ear: the inner ear, the middle ear, and the outer ear. There are three main parts to the outer ear itself: the pinna, the external auditory canal, and the tympanic membrane. So the pinna, which is the entire exterior of the ear, which you can see here, is also known as the earlobe, and its main purpose is to funnel sound waves into the external auditory canal, which is that passageway right there. The sound waves then travel through the external auditory canal until they hit the tympanic membrane, which is also known as the eardrum. As the sound waves hit the tympanic membrane, they create vibrations, which are then sent into the middle ear. The middle ear, which you can see right here, is very small and is composed of just 3 bones. These bones work together to amplify the vibrations coming from the outer ear and to send them into the inner ear. Specifically, they travel into the most important part of the entire hearing system, the cochlea. The cochlea's main job is to take these vibrations and to translate them into electrical impulses, which then travel through a nerve known as the cochlear nerve system, or the auditory nerve, into a section of the brain dedicated specifically to processing sounds. This is the auditory cortex, which is the purple region in this diagram. Depending on the sound, or the frequency of the sound travels to a different part of the auditory cortex. The entire auditory cortex is essentially a frequency map, with neighboring cells being better attuned to similar frequencies. An experiment in the 1990s proved that the auditory cortex can be restructured when a particular tone is learned as important. This experiment utilized guinea pigs and taught them that a specific tone led to the perception of a treat, whereas another tone led to a slight electrical shock. The scientists then observed that these guinea pigs dedicated more cells in their auditory cortexes to these 2 tones and tones similar to them, as they were learned as important. Another experiment in 2002 learned that the auditory cortex can be up to 130% larger in musicians than non-musicians, and the growth is larger the younger training began. Music influences other parts of the brain apart from the auditory cortex. The regions of the brain which control the 2nd to 5th finger of the left hand are significantly larger in violinists than non-violinists. This is because they're often used to play complicated patterns on the violin, whereas the right hand is mainly used for bow control. Also, violinists have a greater reaction in their brain to the sound of a violin than, say, the sound of a trumpet, whereas trumpetists have a greater reaction in their brain to the sound of a trumpet than, say, the sound of a violin. Music activates the same reward systems in our brains as food and drugs, and music is a huge stimulus to the brain. But music also has a strong association with memory. The amygdala is the part of our brain that works to process and feel emotions, and as music often has a strong emotional component, the amygdala is often activated when we hear music, as it works to process and feel these emotions. This is why upbeat music makes us feel happier and gloomier music makes us feel sad. The hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that works to create, store, and recall memories, is also activated when we hear music. The hippocampus finds it easier to recall memories associated with strong emotions, which is why we often remember important days of our lives. But due to music's strong emotional component, the hippocampus often finds it easier to recall memories associated with music, which is why I chose to see how music impacts how well test subjects are able to recall words associated with music. The cerebellum is another part of the brain associated with music. The main purpose of the cerebellum is balance and physical movements, and it is also involved in muscle memory. However, the cerebellum also works to create physical reactions to music, such as nodding your head or tapping your foot. There is another piece of the music-brain relationship we have to understand before we can understand the complicated relationship. This is consonance versus dissonance. Consonant musical intervals have a simple ratio of tone frequencies, such as middle C and middle G, which have a ratio of 2 to 3. This is an example of a consonant sound. The ratio of middle C and C sharp, on the other hand, is 17 to 18, which is a complex ratio and is therefore a dissonant sound. Imaging of the brain showed that two different systems were activated by consonant sounds versus dissonant sounds. Consonant sounds activated reward systems in the right orbitofrontal area of the brain, whereas dissonant sounds activated parts of the brain associated with memory and retrieval, which is what makes a sudden key change or beat drop in the song so remarkable. The temporal lobe is another part of the brain that works with sound. A portion of the temporal lobe in the left hemisphere is mainly associated with words and language, whereas the portion in the right hemisphere is mainly associated with sounds. This is why I chose to test spelling words specifically in my experiment, as there's a close relationship between words and language through the temporal lobe. The frontal lobe is another part of the brain that also works with music. However, that's not its main purpose. The frontal lobe is mainly involved in personality and decision making, but it also works with the prefrontal cortex to process pitch and tone. And it also creates expectations for music, such as a steady beat. Music keeps our brain healthy by exercising all these different parts of the brain. However, there are other upsides to listening to music as well. Listening to music can reduce stress and anxiety, which is often helpful during exam season. Anxiety forces people to procrastinate, and reducing this can help academically. Music reduces our blood pressure and heart rate, which helps us calm down. Music activates both the left and right brain at the same time, which enhances memory and maximizes learning. Music can reduce how intensely we feel pain, especially in the elderly, those in intensive care, and the terminally ill. Music increases our attention span as well, which is important for learning. Also, due to the relationship between music and memory, scientists are now beginning to believe that we can use this to cure those with Alzheimer's and dementia and other memory-related diseases. However, there is still much to be discovered in this relatively new field of science. But there are some setbacks to listening to music while studying. One of these is cognitive limitations. Cognitive limitations mean that our brain can only handle one high-level task at a time. Listening to music and studying are both two high-level tasks, and our brain can only handle one at a time. We often choose to listen to music as it activates reward systems in the brain, as I said earlier. And this can serve as a distraction while listening to music. So this is why I chose in my experiment to see whether the benefits of listening to music while studying would overcome cognitive limitations, or whether cognitive limitations would outweigh the benefits of music. So now that I would like to jump headfirst into my experiment results and findings. So first, here are all of the materials I used in my experiment. I would like to especially point out my 3 playlists. I had a playlist of 10 minutes of classical music, another of 10 minutes of music with English lyrics, and another of 10 minutes of Korean lyrics. And I used the rest of these materials as well. I just wanted to point those out specifically. So here's my procedure. So first, I gave all 30 of my test subjects a set of 10 spelling words to study for 5 minutes. Once 5 minutes were up, I collected their lists and I quizzed them on how well they could study these words. I then repeated this process 3 more times, playing different kinds of music each time they studied. I then tested them on all of these sets of words and recorded my data. So here is my data. This is a raw data table representing all of the scores of all 30 of my test subjects. And here are, so the top table represents my average, standard deviation, and my median. And the graph on the extreme left shows my average, the middle graph shows the standard deviation, and the median is on the extreme right. So as you can see from that graph and the table, classical music had the highest average, and in the raw data table we also saw many perfect scores in that category. This middle graph shows that the English music had the largest standard deviation, meaning it had the largest spread, and there was the most diversity in this category. I didn't see any clear outliers when I was looking at the data, although I never mathematically calculated the outliers, so it is possible that I had one or two, but I never saw any when I just looked over the data. So here we can see my median. The median for no music and classical music was the same, 7, and my median for English music and Korean music was also the same, 5. So overall, I would say my hypothesis was confirmed. Classical music did perform the best. And my background research already indicated that this would happen with the Mozart theory, and so that's why we know classical music performed that way. But that still leaves us with questions about Korean music and English music. I believe that most of the songs I chose for those two categories were relatively mainstream with the age group I chose for this experiment, which was 8 through 13. And as I said earlier, with cognitive limitations, listening to music we enjoy is not good for studying, as it serves as a distraction. The children in my age group were probably distracted during those two categories, which is why they didn't perform as well as they did with classical music. Most of these students were unfamiliar with the techniques used in classical music and were not as easily distracted, which is why they performed that well in that category. I believe that for a project with human test subjects, my standard deviation was low, and most of my data was clustered around the mean. My highest mean was 6.97, that of classical music. My no music mean was 6.59. My English mean was 5.76, and my Korean mean was 5.52. This experiment was very fun for me to complete, but I do think there were several sources of error that could have disrupted my experiment and led to inaccurate results. I conducted most of my testing during the school day, so it's possible that other noises could have disrupted the test subjects while they were memorizing. And some of my students chose to use headphones while listening to music, and some chose to listen directly from a computer. Some of my test subjects had more experience with the words from simply being older. But overall, this experiment was very fun for me to complete and left me with several further questions, such as how do different kinds of music while studying affect other subjects? And how does the mood of a song affect how well the brain remembers it? And could I have done this experiment without as much error? And if so, would my results have been different? Would they have been significantly different? Thank you for listening to my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Actually, we have one more last one. We are running out of time. For your questions, while she is setting it up, you can take a few questions, okay?
I have a question. How did you control, were there any biases in your sample of 30 people that you took? What, their age, their ethnicity, stuff like that, gender, grade level?
So most of my test subjects were on the younger side. So it could have been that the words were too difficult for them. So that could have changed my data in some way. But I think it was fairly equal with all of those demo networks.
Engineering or emergency medicine. Our research project is focused on diabetes and investigating alternative cures and treatments than injecting insulin into the body. We've researched the different ways diabetes affects the body and the progressive and chronic nature of this disease. Through this project, we learned about how many people are affected by this disease and how they're able to live with it in their everyday lives. However, we hope that through projects like ours, this disease becomes less demanding and easier to live with. We also aim to raise awareness in the community about diabetes and help foster
Esmeralda.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and today we'll be talking about advancing diabetes care and exploring possible solutions.
So today we're going to be talking about our purpose, background research, data, and sources and conclusion from our research paper about diabetes. So the purpose of our research paper was to raise awareness about diabetes and investigate possible cures regarding the production of insulin in the body. We feel that this is crucial because diabetes is the 8th leading cause of death in America, and it's very burdensome to manage, especially since majority of the affected community is part of the elderly community as well. Diabetes disrupts insulin production, which leads to high blood sugar and dangerous complications such as vision loss, kidney disease, and heart disease. To combat this disease, patients have a lot of daily management tasks that they have to keep up with, such as insulin injections, glucose monitoring, and dietary guidelines. So we did some research on clinical trials that aim to improve lives, advance diabetes care, and reduce the burdens of this disease. In the U.S., 1 in 5 Americans have undiagnosed diabetes, which means more than 37 million Americans are affected by this disease. Diabetes affects a person's glucose levels and how their body processes food into energy. It occurs when the body does not have adequate levels of insulin, and insulin is a hormone in the pancreas that regulates the amount of glucose in the body. If there's not sufficient insulin, then too much blood sugar accumulates, and that can eventually result in major health issues.
Diabetes is considered a progressive disease, which means that there are definitely different stages of diabetes, and it affects people in various different ways. The stages are insulin resistance, type 1 diabetes, and type 2 diabetes, type 1 being the more severe one. The first stage, insulin resistance, is when the body stops making insulin. At this point, the beta cells are made to compensate. However, at a certain point, they're no longer able to do so, and the patient is now a type 2 diabetes patient. In this stage, they still have functioning beta cells, but the body cannot use the insulin made properly. Some symptoms of type 2 diabetes include hunger, fatigue, or extreme thirst, which can often be mistaken for other sicknesses and can go unnoticed for a long time. At this point, the patient is a type 1 diabetes patient, which means that the pancreas makes little or no insulin at all. Type 1 diabetes, however, contrary to type 2 diabetes, is not caused by external factors like sugar intake or poor diet. It is instead caused by genetic factors and mostly impacts the patient in their childhood. Neither type of diabetes has a true cure. However, there are preventative measures and medication that can make it possible to live with diabetes. Type 2 diabetes can be managed by proper exercise, diet, and limiting sugar intake. However, type 1 diabetes has no cure. However, 1.5 million Americans still live with type 1 diabetes. They do this by taking insulin every day, counting carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, monitoring blood sugar, and maintaining a good diet and exercise. They need to take many types of insulin, including short-acting, rapid-acting, intermediate-acting, and long-acting insulin. A combination of at least 3 of these types of insulin are necessary to keep a diabetes patient of type 1 diabetes far from risk. The goal of all of these insulin and precautions are to keep the blood sugar between 80 and 130.
So there is still a lot of research underway to address the challenges posed by diabetes, but we chose to focus on the Cleveland Clinic, which is conducting a study on a potential therapy that involves a once-weekly injectable dual GIP and GLP-1 protein that stimulates insulin release in the body. The therapy has not only been showing promising results in the trials, but it is also a possible treatment for obesity, as it slows down digestion, which reduces feeling of hunger and reduces food intake.
So here's some of our data and findings. First is this result of a survey in which the data show that the diabetes is actually more prevalent at older ages, and as we mentioned earlier, people in the elderly community are more at risk for results of this survey showing that insulin is costing more and more as time progresses, and it's becoming increasingly expensive to live with diabetes. Because of this, it is crucial that new management techniques are discovered and researched. So, we covered our research relies on credible sources to provide a comprehensive overview of diabetes. We referred to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the American Diabetes Association, and the Mayo Clinic to learn more about the new possible ways to manage diabetes.
In conclusion, we found that diabetes presents significant public health concerns and has many detrimental effects on individuals, as managing diabetes is very inconvenient and it is critical to explore more effective ways to treat this disease. Our goal is to contribute to diabetes management advancement and ultimately improve the quality of life for affected individuals. Thank you.
So, I'm not sure if you guys have research on it. I wanted to ask if you know what's the relation between exercising and diabetes. Why it controls?
Yeah, of course. So obviously having a physical lifestyle will help prevent diabetes as it releases the blood sugar and it
basically exercise and also with that having a healthy diet, basically just a healthy lifestyle in general, is going to reduce the blood sugar in a person's body, which is going to generally lessen the effect of diabetes. And so just having a generally healthy lifestyle will help you deviate from all the chronic diseases that can come from diabetes.
Okay, so I'd like you to go home and research on ATP. Okay, so ATP is the energy capsule. Okay, so that's the correlation because it releases that when you exercise, the muscle get worked out, and then that phosphorus bond that needs to be broken. That's all those sort of stuff. Go over and research that. It's very interesting. You'll understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, আমি যাচ্ছি বিউটিফুল মাইন্ডস from Winnerman Corner. Shantana will check, then we'll give them the award.
Beautiful Minds, the first prize, Priyanka and Sanvi. The presentation was The Silent Killer. Sanvi and Priyanka, can you please come up to the stage? Second prize, Devansi Ananya, Mental Health on Dreams. It's a tie for the second prize. Nahera, she also wins the second prize. Music and Memory. Nahera, Devansi Ananya, please come to the stage. Priyanka and Sanvi for the first prize. Okay, thank you.